We have a new president of the United States. Or at least that was the headline in the newspapers on this day, November 6th, in 1860. But you know what? It was also the headline exactly 1 year later for half the country. Because not only was Abraham Lincoln elected to be president in 1860, but that very election is exactly what ended up spurring the Civil War and why 1 year later the Confederacy ended up electing Jefferson Davis to be their president, also on November 6th. But the date has more slavery significance worldwide because while we were fighting the Civil War back in the 1860s, it was 101 years later, 1962, when Saudi Arabia finally declared slavery to be illegal in their country. They weren't even the last country to do it. Mauritania didn't declare slavery to be illegal until the 1980s. So a lot of people like to think that slavery is this distant memory. That's not really an active part of our current history. But the truth is, your parents, certainly your grandparents, were alive while slavery was still happening in parts of the world. Many, of course, would argue that slavery is currently happening in parts of the world. It's just not in the chattel slavery form we often think of, but that's another conversation. So, as we historians often think of the legacy of slavery in the country, it's important to remember that 1860, when Lincoln was elected, and 1861, when Jefferson Davis was elected, is not long ago. It's really quite recent. And when we're having debates about whether Confederate monuments should still be standing, again, their legacy of what they stood for, which 100% was about slavery, that legacy still is pervasive in the country. And that's why it's important to have conversations about these monuments. It's important to have conversations about the repercussions of slavery. And it's important to have repercussions about how we still, yes, I know it's 150 years ago, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not that long ago. So that's why it's still important that we have conversations about how we can reconcile for our, well, mistake doesn't seem like a big enough word, but the mistake of slavery in this country. So that's the history lesson for today on November 6th, when we reflect on Lincoln's election, Jefferson Davis's election, and Saudi Arabia only just barely over 60 years ago finally getting rid of slavery. And again, Mauritania not until another 20 years after that. That's my lesson today.